During the 1600s, well, actually, in the 1500s, it took shape. Around 1520, 1530, it was already complete. The Americas, the Western Hemisphere, became Spanish. You had the Portuguese with Brazil, but Portugal was kind of in the shadow of the Spanish Empire. It always was. They were still autonomous, did their thing, but were under the shadow of Spain. The Spanish real became the currency used worldwide in international trade. When from 1492 going towards 1600, the world's economy was Spanish. In 1580, Portugal formally joined the Spanish Empire. So Spain was the number one in international relations, international politics, and in international trade. You also had the Danish Empire, which contained the Kingdom of Denmark, Kingdom of Norway, and the Norwegian overseas possessions like Iceland, the Greenland, the Faroe Islands, yes, I believe you pronounce it like that. The Danish conquered their own part of the Caribbean. St. Thomas. They captured it. Spain was more occupied economically with mainland Northern America and the Andes region. So the Caribbean islands, especially so small islands in the east of the Caribbean, they were not well defended by the Spanish Navy. So France took possession of a few of them. Eventually Spain negotiated with France, and France got the western part of the island Hispaniola, which later became the French colony Saint-Dominique, the French translation of Santo Domingo, and later that part today known as the Republic of Haiti. But Denmark, it was a tiny nation in the north of Europe, had around 800,000 people only. Norway had a bit more people. No. 800,000 is too much now. They had around 600,000. And Norway had around 800,000. So there was like 1.1 million people within the Danish Empire. Most of them living outside of Denmark in Norway and the overseas territories of Norway. Denmark established her own colony by occupying 2 Caribbean islands. Why did they do it? I'm using history as a means to teach you something here. Think about it. The Americas became Spanish. So the economy of the Americas was under the jurisdiction of Spain. It was centered around Spain and Spanish needs. And Spain was Roman Catholic. Denmark was Protestant. And at the time there was a huge fight between the Protestants and the Roman Catholics. They couldn't get along at all. If Denmark wanted to benefit of the abundance in the Americas, it either could send diplomats to Madrid and Mexico City requesting permission to trade in Spanish America, or they could, by conquest, conquer their own part of America, and from their part of America, they would operate in the Americas. And that's what they did. They established the Danish West Indies, and from the Danish West Indies, they traded with Spanish America. And because they had their own part of the Caribbean, their own part of the Americas, with their own resources, they were now in a far better position to negotiate deals with Spanish America. Sweden quickly did the same thing. England followed. England later became Britain when it merged with Scotland in the early 1700s, but England did the same thing. The Dutch also did the same thing. The Dutch went to South America. In South America, it was in the south of Brazil and in the west of the South American continent where the most activities were. That means in the Andes region and in the mountains region in the south of Brazil. So around the Amazon and river, or the Marañón River, as it also was called, you had the Guyana region, which was not highly populated, and the Dutch established a few settlements over there. And the Spanish tolerated them because the Spanish were too busy with their own thing over there. So the Dutch had their part of America, where they had plantations run by Portuguese Jews that became prosperous. They also had the Dutch Antilles, a few islands in the Caribbean also. The Dutch made sure they had their America. What is it that I'm teaching you with this video? Just think about it carefully. All those nations could have subjected themselves to the Spanish economy. And they could have gotten big deals out of it. But if they would have done that, they would have acknowledged Spain as their superior, and they would have benefited the Spanish economy, not their own. So instead of integrating in the Spanish economy, they forced themselves into the Americas, occupied a small portion of the Americas, where they introduced their own economy. They still had to deal with Spain, because Spain was the main maritime power over there, the main economic power, but they dealt with Spain on their terms. Spain had its terms, but Spain had to deal with their terms also. There's a lot you can learn from this. A lot. There were countries in the east of Europe, like the Polish, they were like Poland, or Poland and Lithuania later became a commonwealth together. There were countries that didn't do this. There were German states, even big ones, that didn't look for their part in the Americas. So they now had to get along with either the Danish, Swedish, Dutch, or French economy. Why? They had no part of America of their own. I mean, just think about it. If the Polish, because there were Poles involved in international trade back then, there were Poles in the Americas that migrated over there, that worked for the Spanish. If the Poles, or the Polish people, let me say it like this, if the Polish people would have occupied maybe a small Caribbean island and declared it Polish territory, they would have had their own base in the Americas. They could have placed like 30 naval vessels over there, their small navy, to guard the island. They could have transported Polish colonists over there, and you would have Polish America. And now they were in state to negotiate with the Spaniards in the Americas. And Poland's sphere of influence would have grown. But the Polish had no interest in establishing their part in the Americas, because the biggest part of Eastern Europe fell under Polish jurisdiction when it merged with Lithuania later on. So, because they didn't look at the bigger picture, they thought we don't need any part of America. Well, in the 18th century, at the end of the 18th century, Poland ceased to exist. The former Kingdom of Prussia, which was suppressed by the Polish authorities, now took over Poland. And the other part was given to the Russian Empire. So the great Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth ceased to exist. And now the Polish didn't even have their own country. They were a nation in diaspora, in their own land. Parts became German, others became Austrian, kind of the same, and others became Russian. And who was there to help them? Nobody. Now look, I'm not here to give history lesson. I'm using history as a means to teach you something here. When Spain was establishing its kingdoms in the Americas, the Dutch came, the Danish came, the Swedish came, the French came, later was the English came, the Scottish also, but later Scotland went together with England, so that came together. They established their part in the Americas. Italy was not one nation. Italy was divided in many republics, but the word Italians were part of the Spanish Empire. So that's why, the Italians had their part in what they call Venezuela. That's why it's called Venezuela, Little Venice. The countries that don't look at the bigger picture lost in the long term. And the reason I'm mentioning this colonial history, is because I want you to translate this parable to your daily life now. You are meant to be the salt of the earth and light of the world. You are meant to walk in biblical prosperity. So why do you seek integration in society, which is a fear construct? God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. So in fear there is no power, no love, and no sound mind. So if God did not give you a spirit of fear, why are you submitting and integrating in a fear construct? That would be the same as the Protestant Kingdom of Denmark submitting to the Roman Catholic Empire of Spain. Denmark didn't do it. Denmark sought its own part of the Americas. And they invested in it. Or it would be like Poland at the time thinking, man, we don't need the Americas. We are fine here. Even though many Polish people were active in trade in the Americas, if Poland would have gotten its part of the Americas, its income would have increased, its international relevance would have increased also. And if that had more international relevance, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth would not have collapsed like it did, and the Polish wouldn't have lost their country. Because they lost their country. They lost their homeland. A lot of folks are like Poland during the colonial eras. They have their comfort zone, which is not really comfort, but people call it comfort. They have their comfort zone, and are only interested in preserving their comfort zone. They're not interested in anything else. That comfort zone will fill them sooner or later, and what do they have left? While others are like Denmark and Sweden during the colonial era. They seek their part of the new world. They don't allow Spain to take over the whole new world and everyone has to deal with Spain however Spain wants. No. They went to the new world themselves and they established their part in the new world so that they were also a stakeholder of the new world. And it worked. It worked quite well. Now I'm using history to teach you. I've said this before. Are you like Denmark? Are you like the Danish Empire, or are you like the Polish Commonwealth? You know what happened to the Polish Commonwealth? They didn't look at the bigger picture. They were centered around themselves. A bit xenophobic also. And it ended up being divided and they lost everything. The Danish, which were a very tiny population, despite them being a tiny population, being a tiny people, small in number, they built their navy and they forced themselves into the Americas and they got their own part of the Americas. And from there, they went to India also. So this Joden said, then the Danish East Indies, despite them being small in number, They looked at the bigger picture and they acted in a strategic, wise manner. While Poland, with many more inhabitants, acted foolishly. Look, you're in the world, okay? So you acknowledge you're in the world. You got to pretend as if you're not in the world, but you're not of the world. So while you're in the world, you look at the bigger picture to see how the world operates. And now, on the earth, you establish your blessing, and based on your blessing, you relate to the world. You don't relate to yourself on the world's terms. No, now the world has to deal with your terms. That's how it ought to be. But a lot of folks just want to be left alone, so they integrate to be left alone, and they end up losing everything. Learn from this. Be at peace.